I'm Elia Haber for the Beirut Banyan. As many of you know, it's very hard to collaborate with others, whether you're organizing a small event at a coffee shop or a bigger one or even a street demonstration. This frustration is something that I've always discussed with friends and people who readily organize events. It's not that because it's easy, but they have experience with that. Among those people is Claude. We meet up before one of his organized events. This one, it's not about the revolution, but about bringing another community together. We sit down for a cup of tea. We also talk about how challenging it is to want to change a situation in a given country, in this case Lebanon, and on the other hand, also be going abroad. Here's our conversation.
My name is Claude Jabr. I'm 40 years old. I work in the software industry.
Claude, we've known each other for a long time. This is not the first protest episode that we've seen in Lebanon together or separately. What do you think puts this one apart, especially that we're now looking at it almost 3 months later?
What happened so far since October 17 is not like separated from what happened in the past, maybe before 2011 even. What happened is really magnificent because we saw people maybe for the first time protesting in their regions like Nabatiye, where they protested against the historical warlords, and they broke like the fear somehow, not entirely. The new chants we had, instead of Isqat al-Nizam, we had some new chants specific for Lebanon. And the graffiti, which were also amazing in Beirut especially. And I had the chance to see all the graffitis on all the walls. We should really conserve these because eventually they will erase everything on the walls. But so far it was really incredible in my opinion. And of course, now we should start thinking ahead what's next, because they are in power and the people won't continue protesting forever on the streets.
And I'm glad you mentioned the chants, because in the chants we have a lot of thawra. Like I know I now pronounce th instead of th. That's an achievement, I guess, at least for me. Do you think, after this while, or have you ever thought that it's actually a thawra, or would you characterize it as something else now?
I know some people wouldn't agree, but personally, I don't think we're yet in the revolution. People broke the statu quo. Let's call it, in Arabic we call it intifada, maybe we call it in English revolt. So people said no. So what was been happening since October 17, that people no longer want to live like before. So this is clearly, I call it Saura. I don't call it like this because we don't want to be disappointed. And to build a revolution, it takes lots of time. It takes different tactics, because so far we've been protesting on the streets, and now recently people entering the banks, maybe blocking the park meters, etc. So if you want to move to a revolution, we're talking about political, cultural, social, economical. So this is and revolution takes time. It doesn't happen in 2-3 months. So we need to be patient. So far we did great, but we need to move along to something else, to the actual revolution. And plus we cannot call it revolution. Someone will call it revolution, in my opinion. So in history they'll call it on October 17, something happened in Lebanon. We cannot say I woke up in the morning and I'm starting a revolution.
I definitely agree this is something that will be clearer to generations after, not necessarily maybe ours. But I would also like to ask you, since we're kind of, I'm not going to say it's something that happened and we're retrospectively looking at it, we're midway. And I'm a very big proponent of evaluating what has been done so far, personally and as a collective. Because I know I've failed at many times in places where I should have contributed and I didn't, or I shouldn't have contributed and I put my nose in something that I shouldn't have. I would like to ask you, as a collective, where do you think we've failed, and where do you think we've succeeded against the odds?
First, I don't like the word to fail. Let's call it an experience, because there's no recipe. You don't open your drawer, you get a manual how to topple a dictatorship in Lebanon. It doesn't happen like this, or else we've done it long before. So as I said, what happened so far is people were revolting against the statu quo. The decentralization was amazing, but we have a problem with decentralization because when you take a decision, for example, let's take when they blocked the streets, it took weeks to stop this tactic. And people were saying, like, we need to continue, back in the street, and this was backfiring. So to propagate this solution, so it took several months. And if we look, we have a regime that's 40, 50 years old, and you cannot, it's inside the economy, and inside, it has people, it has allies. They are not like alone 7-6 people. They have other people with them. They have businesses, they have the media, they have the army. And they have someone like Hezbollah. And so it's a whole system that we need to break. And in order to break the system, you need to find the weakest points of the system. And to find the weakest point of the system, you cannot continue just to protest every day on the street. And although the chants are amazing, but you cannot break a system like this without a plan. So decentralization now needs to have some kind of, not a leader. I'm against having a leader because they'll kill the leader. So we need to have some kind of leadership just to manage. Example, someone did an action for the park meter, and this lasted for several days and then stopped. Someone need to take hold of this and do a mechanism how to sustain this, because this act is on an economic level and we can break this company, for example. And someone wanted to create an alternative media, which in my opinion is one of the main issues that we need to tackle in Lebanon in order to have different rhetorical and different speech. Because in Lebanon, all the media is controlled by the politician. Even LBC and Al Jadid, they have to do the calculations and see. And now, if you look at them, you see they are no longer covering the protest day and night like before. They put you in the news for several minutes. So that's why we need to plan. And the decentralization now shouldn't be about location. The centralization now should be about the tactics, the different tactics, but it should have like an umbrella of how the tactics will serve each other. In order, for example, someone does the media, alternative media, it should talk always about the actions. Someone who's doing on the L, for example, doing a protest, and should talk with the other people. And no one should interfere with someone saying that you're doing this on the park meter, it doesn't work. Who knows what works and what doesn't work? That's why I don't call it a failure. We need to do a trial and error and see what works, and then we should build on that and escalate. Okay. And this will take a lot of time.
Okay. Based on that, I think we both know that currently on social media, there are some attempts at organization. So let's say you mentioned the park meter. There's a page. I know they organize events. They keep sending pictures of new park meters. They sabotage, or whatever name you want to call it. There's also outlets for, I'm going to use the word media. Let's say Daraj, a megaphone. So do you think that these initiatives are not enough? Or where's your criticism? Because I know there are plans. Is our problem that we can't find a plan that we all agree on?
Let's take, for example, what happened on October, starting October. Imagine if the traditional media, the mainstream media, didn't cover anything. So everything would be in the bubble on social media. And in my opinion, nothing would have happened like this. So we need the mainstream media. And by mainstream, I don't mean like the conventional media. You can be like mainstream media on online too. But if you have Facebook, you have a Facebook page, or you have a channel on YouTube, and we know how technically this is controlled by an entity. So the news is filtered by the person. So it's not like you have a TV and you watch whatever you want to watch anytime you want. But here you're filtered. So what we need to do is not simply doing like small attempts. We need alternative media. And by alternative media, I'm not talking about news only. I'm talking about arts. I'm talking covering all these issues. So we need to start producing something new after October 17. And all these news, they've been available in Lebanon for so long, but they were underground. It's time for the underground to be on the ground and start attracting the people who are interested, and especially the youth. Because this revolution, the main fire is the young people. And the problem also with the young people, maybe it's the first time they are going down the street. They think we protest 1, 2, 3 months and the regime will fall. They think they are in France or in some democracy. We are not in a democracy. Also, the main problem, some people still think we are in a democracy. That's why the tools, they are not working. So they say we want to double the government, we want to talk to our deputies, and the deputies, they don't even listen. They don't even care because they know how they get elected. They have a small group, they elect them. So we need a plan. Do I know what's the solution? I don't know. But for me, I know I want to try. And the danger is if you stop trying and we say, okay, it doesn't work, khalas, I'm leaving the country. Especially, this is the most dangerous thing we can do. Khalas, it doesn't work. I protested for 2-3 months. It doesn't work. I'm leaving the country. No. That's why they want. So we need to persevere, and we need to build an action plan, which is not present in the meantime. So everyone is doing a small initiative. We need to put them on like a rail, and the train of, if you call it revolution, should start. So what we need now in these megaphone, the criticism is like sometimes they compete in some way. This is good, of course, but not for now. So they need to complement each other. I don't want to say they need to unite because, you have the personal egos. If someone does something and someone else say, no, this is not good, they won't be able to collaborate. So in my opinion, what we need collaboration and not competition. Personally, I'm totally against competing because everything works with collaboration. Take your body, every single organ, they collaborate together to create your body. So we cannot compete, especially now, to compete on media outlets, to compete on, if you have 2 or 3 initiatives on Park Meter, we should not do this. So we should combine our efforts and have like a direct direction. We need a direction. We cannot continue like this. We have amazing initiatives, but still now we don't have a direction. Where are we heading? Are we going to hit the L? Are we going to hit... so what are the similarities? What this will serve? So that's why we need to observe how this system is functioning and find a way on how to destroy it, because we need to destroy this system. So the word in Arabic, isqat al-nizam, is just something abstract, but we need to translate this. What is the nizam, in fact? So we need to move out of the streets. I'm not saying stop protesting, because protesting is one tool. We have so many tools. Plus, we should always I understand the frustration of people, but we should not move to violence. Because moving to violence is what they want, because they excel in violence. We remember we have warlords who took power. So if you play on their playground with their violence, they will win eventually. So being peaceful, I'm not saying pacifists. We should hit them with non-violence. And we can train people and show them how to, for example, occupy a bank without destroying. Because if you destroy a bank, it will retaliate against you. And the bank will say, okay, I will close. You don't have your money anymore, and we will lose. So we need to break this balance of power. They are still powerful. And we should not have some dream saying that we are now powerful. No, we are not powerful. They are still in power. So how to take power from them? These small initiatives, if we align them economically, socially, politically, and we should have this kind of umbrella, then we can break the system. It might take 2-3 years. And even sometimes you can look at the streets and see no one protesting. It doesn't matter if someone protests or not. You need to infiltrate the system and break it. And this will take time. We need perseverance and patience. That's what we lack now.
I want to pick up on something you said, which is something we can all relate to, especially if you've organized anything before. It's how challenging it is to get people to collaborate. I don't know if you agree with me, but I think first we need to agree on what the current situation is. And then if we agree on that, we might agree on a plan and maybe a direction. So for that, I would also remind you of something I'm sure you already know. Some of us don't even agree what the system is. Some people still think that it's a perfect democracy. I know many people who protest, who are very committed, who are making action plans based on the fact that if they put enough pressure on specific ministers or deputies, their consciousness might weigh in, or they might get a verdict in one way or another based on that. How do you have the conversation with people who still believe in a reformative action plan?
The main problem, we didn't have the real change so far because we are unable to agree on the diagnosis. So, and even the definition, what's the system, in fact, and how to fight this. To fight the system, we need to know what's our problem. Some people say this is sectarianism. So if you remove sectarianism, we'll have a country free of corruption? I don't think so. And even some people say, let's install secularism. Okay, my question is always how. We are not in power to install anything. What we can do now is fight and to break what's currently available. We can only break things now. We cannot build anything because we are not in power. You cannot build anything if you're except the initiatives we're doing. But to really change the country, you need to be in power. And we need to agree on a set of what's the system, what's the problem in Lebanon. Personally, what I think, if you go back in history, I'm not going back in the 40s. Let's go back to before the 90s when the civil war broke. So the first mistake our parents did is that those who did the civil war, they changed the suits and they became prime ministers, and they ruled the country. So this is the biggest mistake ever you can do, is the people without they had an immunity. They moved from holding guns, and now they hold another kind of power. They control our destiny since the 90s. The same people you hear about Birri, you hear about Aoun, with different location. Birri has been a speaker for 30 years. So if we observe, this is not a democracy. When you have someone in power for years, for decades, so this is a dictatorship. But it's a different kind of dictatorship. Our problem is we compare to the surrounding. So we say we're not like Iran, we have election. Okay, the election, you can manufacture election, you can rig it. So it's not like if you have election, and let's look back at election, 9 years without an election. They stayed in power, and then when they were ready, they created a law for them to win again, and they did the election, and we know how they won. So an election is not a criteria for a democracy. For me, a democracy, let's look at people, let's look at anyone, even those who are aligned with them. Let them ask them, do you have the freedom to talk? Do you have electricity? Do you have the basic means of living? They will tell you no. So you don't have a democracy. If we all are willing to do something and it's not being done for the past 40 years, so you're not in a democracy. The will of the people is not translated in the parliament. Of course, these people, they represent some people. A mafia ruler, he represents people, of course. But it doesn't mean he should rule. So our main problem now, we need to define what's our problem. Plus, we have like a gap between two generations now. So we have the generation, let's say the old leftists, the communists, who are living like a dream, and it doesn't reflect reality. So now, for them, it's their chance to pick up and to give a scene for the Communist Party, whereas you have some other leftists who are like completely disconnected from those communists and say, you don't represent us even. So there's even a clash inside this revolution. Who's going to lead? And a group of people is not as powerful as the secular parties, like the Communist Party and the Syrian party in Lebanon. So they are not as powerful, and they are like fighting back with each other, saying, and this is since like 2015 and even before, they won't let these new people not be in power, but just to define some new grounds for being like what is modern left. So we need to renew our ideologies and everything. We cannot like stick in the past saying that. And if you look at any party who's been in the country, even they didn't have a deputy during their entire presence in Lebanon. So this is a sign you're failing somewhere, or you need to change your tools. So let someone else. So this is our main problem. Our problem is not them. They have the power, of course. Our problem is us. And this is natural, of course, because the political life is when I disagree with you. You want to privatize, I don't want. You want civil marriage, I don't want. This is normal. We cannot. There's no one-fit-all solution for Lebanon or for any country. But currently, you have the mafia ruling the country, while everyone else saying like, I want this, I want that, I want. You're not in power. You're claiming what to whom? So this is the real problem. We need to fight. We need to break the system. We need to devise new tactics to break the system, be creative, and not say, no, this doesn't work in Lebanon, let's try and let it fail, and let's learn, and let's retry. So this is the only way for me to do the change. Even if you don't agree on a set of words, how to describe, okay, let's say I agree with you, with your description. Let me try the tools. If it doesn't work, then I'm wrong. So let's try something else. We have the luxury because we are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, they are in their 80s. So even those in power, they don't realize they're going to die in 5 to 10 years. And they have a huge void. And we also have a huge void because we don't have an alternative till now. It is normal, and at the same time, it's not normal. So we need to put an effort. As I said, there's no one-fit-all solution. We need to work really hard.
Is there any lesson that you've learned in these past 3 months that you didn't know in the previous movements, whether with طلعت ريحتكم, stuff before? Is there a lesson that you've learned you're like, I wish I knew this before?
The lesson learned, maybe I was always had a hope. Many of my friends used to tell me that you were always saying people will revolt one day, and they revolted eventually. But the surprise for me, maybe I was expecting more in terms of, I was afraid of the violence. Because if you look at this revolution in Lebanon and you compare to in France the Premier Bosch, where they burned almost Paris, and we don't have anything in Lebanon. So if someone throws a stone or burns an ATM, this is nothing compared to what we're suffering. Maybe I learned this lesson, and this comforts me now, because I know, so far at least, we're not going into chaos, because as I said, violence is their territory. So if we go and burn and destroy and blow up things, they know how to handle this. They have the regular army, and they have their militias, so they can hit you. So I'm really now hopeful that this continues like this. We don't need more violence. We had enough of violence in Lebanon for the past, 100 years maybe. Every 20, 30 years we have a civil war. And it's not our war. It's our war. It's not what they say, the war of someone else. But it's not our intent. So I would never fight anyone from another religion, or of course, even hold any gun against someone who thinks different than me or have a different religion, of course. But if we remember the past, it's a small minority of people who were seeking power. If you go to Harakat Amal and Hezbollah and Lebanese forces and Tayyar, back then it was the army. So on what you're fighting? You're fighting against what? The Syrians, the Palestinians? So why you fought each other if you're fighting the enemy? Who's the enemy, in fact? For me, now the enemy is internal. The enemy is this mafia ruling the country without any... they get elected all the time, they stop elections, they do whatever they want, they destroy the currency. They have total immunity, and people are afraid of saying, what if we remove them? We don't have anyone else. So this is crazy. Of course, we have... why, if you take any individual in Lebanon and as an individual goes abroad, he can excel and do something with his life, and we cannot even have a prime minister different than Saad al-Hariri or a speaker different than... This is insane. So this is what we need to work on, to have like the hope. And for me, I'm very hopeful. I decided maybe 20 years ago, I will never leave this country. Not because I love the soil, or because we can do actual change in a place where it's still the startup nation, in my opinion. I cannot change France, nor change USA to a certain extent, but I can build Lebanon. I can be part of this. I want to be part in building the country, even like building something so small. But we can change. That's why we need people to stay in Lebanon. What they want, the youth, to grow and to leave Lebanon. And this is our biggest tragedy. So we have the youth, they are leaving Lebanon because they want to care for their lives. For me, how many times you can live? One time. So let's change, let the change be here. What would you serve France or... okay, you would make a better life for yourself. Okay, do it. But if we claim we want to have this country, if anyone claims I want to build this country, you cannot leave Lebanon. You need to stay here. Maybe you need to suffer But this is part of the experience. For me, I'm very happy, despite everything. Sometimes we don't have any money. We're waiting in the banks for several hours, but this is part of the change. We are inside change. And maybe 50 years later, they will talk about these incidents. It's like any revolution everywhere. You are inside it, so you'll have the frustration, and you'll have the ups and downs. Sometimes during the one single day, we need to persevere again. We need to be patient. It doesn't happen like this. Lebanon has been rotting for me, 100 years. From the start, it was rotting. It was degrading. So now we are paying the price of all the policies, of the entire mafias that have been ruling the country on so many levels. And it's getting really bad. If we continue being silent, it will get even worse. So that's why we need to move. We need to say no and move and try different recipes. We tried this recipe, it doesn't work. So let's try something else. So it's part of an experience. And in 20, 30 years, I'll say not only I tried, I know I will make a difference. Everyone will make a difference if you continue to try. If you stop trying, you will never make a difference. So this is what we do. We should try, and never surrender.
Elia Haber, signing off from Martyrs Square for the Beirut Banyan.